Welcome back to the best new underground metal albums on Bandcamp, and let's just jump into the latest set of recommendations. We're going in with Hereza out of Stuttgart, Germany, with Decomposed Beyond Recognition. Let's give it a listen.
Part of me. I had these obsessive desires and
Okay, so remember, each band gets about 30 seconds or so for me to just kind of investigate and hopefully get you interested as well. Hearing some pretty solid, like, death thrash here, getting my head banging towards the end. I think the production is pretty solid too. Digging the album art, definitely pretty gnarly and brutal looking and sounding. And yeah, overall, liked what I was hearing and hope that it's enough to get y'all interested to check them out. I don't really necessarily have any feedback other than spread the word. So let's move on to Avexia with Fyrst W or something like that. They are out of Croatia, and let's check this one out. That sounds pretty rad. Some pretty kind of dynamic sounding black metal there. I mean, there's some classic, just second wave roots, obviously, but I also like that we're going into these kind of like slower, eerier, moodier sections, it sounds like. And I really loved that moment where I don't know if it was just him messing with his voice or if there was an effect on there, but when he got that like raspy kind of like gurgly sound there was something going on, something special. So dug that. Again, production sounds really good. The songwriting sounds really promising too, again, just from that short clip. So yeah, as far as would I be interested in hearing more? Absolutely. And hopefully you will go check them out. Next, we have Bentham's Head with Blood, Salt, and Ash out of Melbourne, Australia. That already sounded really cool. I'm sad that I had to hit stop because it sounded like it was about to go into a whole thing there too. But yeah, very cool. They call themselves Progressive Sludge, which is appropriate because I was going to make some Mastodon comparisons with the riffs, but I like the kind of heavier, harsher vocals. Another one with solid production today. Usually there's a couple sprinkled in that have kind of not so great production, so that's nice. I think the hardest thing about this segment is, and why I even feature it really, is there's just too much music out there for me to cover in my kind of normal form videos, and no matter how much I listen to, there'll always be more I don't get to. So hopefully that, again, just gets you interested enough to check them out. Maybe I'll find some time to listen to this more in full, but man, I have been busy. But moving on, speaking of which, we have Vile Species with Disqualified as a Human out of Athens, Greece. Let's give it a listen. Gnarly. Gnarly is the word that comes to mind. One of my favorite words to describe music like this. Definitely getting a mix of death metal, thrash metal, and definitely grindcore, which is in the tags. That last riff reminded me a lot of like Pig Destroyer, but there's also a little bit of like early cattle decapitation in there, especially with how brutal and kind of gurgly, again, the vocals are. Production's a little raw, but that's sort of par for the course with this grindier stuff, so I wouldn't want to improve it too much from what it is. But yeah, it just seems like a straight injection of adrenaline to the scrotum, for lack of a better phrase. Next up, we have Excruciation with Pain out of Zurich, Switzerland. That sounds pretty cool. You know, y'all know I'm not a big Doom guy, but as far as this goes, you're catching my attention, which is always a compliment. For these types of bands, definitely some kind of funeral vibes with those slow melodies. The vocals pretty strong too. I come across a lot of more clean vocal focused Doom bands where the vocals are just kind of like, not very good, but I was liking what I was hearing there. Very prophetic sounding. I love this artwork. It reminds me of a lot of like early 2000s bands that I used to listen to, especially in like the melodeath scene. There are a lot of album arts similar to this, thinking about like Soilwork from that era and stuff like that. Dark Tranquility too. But yeah, sounds interesting. And again, maybe I'll get some time, but man, do I have quite the list to get through. So moving on, we have Post-Death Soundtrack with Veil Lifter. And I don't see the location listed on here. I do see Canada in the tags, though, but let's check it out. Yeah, another one with some Mastodon vibes, I would say, coming from sort of a different angle on that. Love those bouncy riffs and that kind of bluesy, southern fried flair to just the overall guitar sound. I'm loving this artwork, which also gives me some pretty strong Mastodon vibes, thinking of like Blood Mountain and things of that nature. Very cool. Kind of like a little stonery vibe to it as well. You got grunge in the tags, doom, thrash. Maybe we get into some other stuff in this album too, but again, this is just a sample, so you'll have to go check out their Bandcamp page to find out for yourself. Production sounds good. I've had very little feedback today, which is kind of atypical, but that just shows how many amazing bands there are underground that are easy to miss. And the next one we have is John Mura with Shale Sis. I think this is a reference to like a line of code or like an execution, something like that. It's out of UK. Let's check it out. Dang, I was vibing to that. That's like a mix of like Skinny Puppy's instrumental songs with like some Silent Hill soundtrack stuff. So all the best, just the best things there. I'm a big sucker for industrial music. I don't think there's nearly enough of it. And like electronic music too. So this definitely tickles that itch. I might even want to put this on later today while I'm finishing up some work. Definitely good vibe and background music. Driving music, it's always good for that to just more contemplative kind of stuff. Sounded great too, like across the board, production wise, just perfection. So moving on to the next one, we have Wretchgod with Suffering Upon Suffering out of Nebraska. Dang, that is some hypnotic and ominous sounding stuff. Like, obviously, that was a reflexive head bob there, which is always a good sign. Just felt like I was being carried away by demons in the best possible way. Love the vocals. They call themselves like abyssal blackened death metal, but I hear a lot of like groove emphasis in there as well. Maybe even some kind of like sludgier, a little bit of like Lord Mantis vibe, come to think of it, from that one. And that is definitely a compliment, because they are an awesome band that wish you'd hear more from, but don't know if we're going to. But anyways, sometimes things are best in the smallest doses. But yeah, another one, no feedback. Sounds incredible. Love it. Hopefully, I would definitely, this is definitely one that I would pin as being like, yeah, I want to hear more from this for sure. Not that the other ones are not that either, but moving on, we have Blue Heron with Everything Fades out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. All right, I can't be the only one, so you all in the audience can say it with me. Who does this band remind you of? 3, 2, 1. High on Fire. Like, very clear High on Fire reference points with this one, with those grooves. It's interesting. We have a lot of like sludgier bands today, which I feel like we don't normally get this many, especially in a row. But that sounded very much like earlier High on Fire. And I had the pleasure of going through their discography to rank it, if you haven't seen that video yet. But that was a great time. Really enjoyed their music, and I could see how fans of that, like myself, would also enjoy this potentially too. I like the ruggedness of the production. It like wasn't too clean, but it wasn't too raw either. It was like right in between, where it's catching that kind of like desert, dry grit to it. Yeah, good stuff again. Where are we? I lost my space here. Right here. Oh, speaking of which, we have Bragging Rights, which we've covered before and sometimes is even made like my best of the month list. Unfortunately, this time I just had too much. I had too many things to cover. So we're just going to cover it here with Small Gods. They are, again, from the UK. Another head bobber there for sure. And this is one, again, I have listened to the whole album. I would recommend it. Feedback I would give on this one: I think the production needs some tweaking. It's a little bit muddy. The drums, in particular, feel kind of compressed, and just like, I want more just impact of those snare hits. I want the bass drum to not kind of, they're like melding together. Again, I'm not a producer, so I don't know the best terms to describe this, but those are just things that I'm noticing. But I love the songwriting. So definitely, again, recommend people check this one out. But if I'm giving some feedback like I usually do, that's what I have for this one. And always happy to hear more from Bragging Rights. I would also say less is more. Y'all have been like just punching out material, and it's like almost too much to keep up with, and it can be overwhelming, especially since I have so many other bands to talk about. And speaking of which, we're going to go on to Decades in the Shadows with Decades in the Shadows, also out of the UK. That guitar was cooking. Again, we're getting all these like Southern Fried sounding bluesy guitars today, which is again kind of unusual. You usually get a lot more kind of like brutal death metal and a lot of black metal, so it's kind of a nice change of pace, maybe with the change of season too. They say heavy metal, but in the tags there's alternative rock. I would say it's more like that. We don't get a ton of alternative rock here. It sounded pretty cool, and I've bemoaned a lot about how modern radio, as far as like new stuff goes, like barely plays any just like rock music with guitars. And I'd like to hear more of that. This is definitely something I could see doing okay on the radio too, especially like it had a little bit of that 90s flow to it that I love so much. That's like my favorite era of the radio. So yeah, production was pretty good. I don't know if I had any feedback. Vocals, performances were all strong. Again, the guitars were sounding really cool. So awesome. Next we have here we go with some heavier stuff. NilhilistVoid with Cenotaph out of Guatemala. I'm not sure we've had a band out of Guatemala. My mom's gone there a few times. Okay, I say heavier, but it's gonna hit. Trust me, it's gonna hit. With a cover like this, it's gonna hit. Or maybe it's gonna be doomier. Here we go. There it is. I knew it was coming. Okay, this one wins the award so far for defying my expectations. I really thought I knew where that was going to go, and I was totally wrong. That drum fill before the transition, like, wow, that was great. I love stuff that can throw me off like that and actually surprise me, which is a hard thing to do these days, especially with how much music I listen to. So, mad props for that. And then all the instrumentation, performance-wise, production, everything sounded great. This is another one I would definitely, if I can find the time, would like to fit it in, because I'm even hearing, like, I know there's like post-black and post-metal and stuff in the tags, but I'm also hearing like mathcore kind of stuff going on there, maybe even a little bit of like ulcerate-y kind of stuff. It's definitely more technical, so that is right up my alley. Hats off to them for that. So moving on, we have Skognatt, who we have definitely covered before, with Andromeda. They're out of Augsburg, Germany. You need a band logo or photo or something. Also, change your background. No white backgrounds. You know, I'm anti that. But anyways. Definitely matching the album art here. I do feel like I'm floating through space. Especially there was that really cool part where the guitar tremolos were being layered with this very subtle kind of twinkly starlight sort of synth sound. And I love the little ambient break that was very kind of vacuum of space and then back into it. Appropriate too, because last night we were driving home from the airport and a huge meteor fell like right in front of us. Like it was one of the brightest, kind of like, you know, like a shooting star basically, but you could see it entering the atmosphere and burning up, and it looked massive. So I was genuinely kind of scared when I saw that, and I feel like that fits the vibe of this album. So yeah, another one across the board. Sounds good. So y'all throwing in like excellent recommendations. This probably band for band, album for album, as far as, again, the samples I'm listening to, might be the best episode so far in terms of consistency. So, hats off to y'all for that, too. Next, we have Wyrm, Lord of the Rings reference there, but spelled differently. Love that already. With Venomous Verses out of Ohio. Very like nihilistic kind of industrial vibes from like the 90s, but mixed with black metal, experimental kind of black metal. You have picked the perfect name for your project. I will definitely say that. Like this, I listen to this and I'm like, oh yeah, that is a Wyrm for sure. Absolutely. I like the mix. Again, I'm a huge industrial fan. I like black metal a lot. So when you smash them up like this, makes for a good time. I just like genre mixes to begin with. The Cryptop in the tags. I've not seen that, but I love that too. Very interesting. I'm a big shout out to anything that's super unique. So as far as like what we've listened to today, this one so far may have the award for like the most original sounding concept, and sounded really cool. Interested to hear more. Hope I get time to do that. Next is Soulvapor with Soulvapor. And again, I don't see where you are out of in the top, but I see United States in the tags. Let's give it a listen.
Before, I don't know what tomorrow looks like.
Okay, when I saw this album cover, I was not expecting that. I mean, you could run into some problems with this. You gotta be careful, because it's almost like clickbait in music form, where I see this logo, and I see this album art, and I say to myself, this is going to be black metal or black and death metal, most likely. Maybe black and thrash. Instead, it is gent and spiritual music for the soul, as they called it. Now, that is not a complaint. I really like this type of music too, and I thought the performances were excellent. Definitely on the polar opposite side of some of the other stuff we've been listening to today with that more kind of like modern, pristine production. But the guitar sounded good. I loved the little, I forget what that instrument is, but it was going on in the quieter section with that little... It's a string instrument that I think you use mallets on, if I'm even getting that right. But I loved that. The vocals were really strong. That can be very hit and miss in this kind of genre. And I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued why you chose this aesthetic to go with the music. And maybe that becomes clearer as we get deeper into the album. But count me interested. There's a lot of just like shit paint by numbers gent these days, and this sounded more interesting to me than that. So yeah, hopefully, again, we'll check that out. Hopefully y'all will check these out. Next up we have Oscillotron with Oblivion out of Sweden with a 1 hour track. Let's give it a listen. Okay, this is interesting because this is like pure drone, right? Pure drone music for an hour, and in the purest form, fitting to the name too, because it does just sound like we're just listening to this for an hour. But I was curious, like, okay, is this just the same sound literally for an hour, or are there subtle variations? And maybe it was my brain playing tricks on me, or maybe not. But I feel like the deeper I got in, I did notice some slight shifts. Now, do I have the patience for something like this? To just listen to? Probably not. But as like something I'd put on in the background as like thinking kind of music, absolutely. It's an interesting idea. Probably not the first time it's been done, but it's the first time I've had that. This is definitely the purest form of drone we've had on this segment. So yeah, interesting. I don't know. I'd be really curious down in the comments what people think of something like this, whether it's something you like absolutely love and why, if that's the case. But they call it heavy minimalism from Sweden, and this is about as minimalist as it can get. So yeah, I don't know. I'll be thinking about this one. I'll say that much. It'll be something I'll still be thinking about later on today. And then we have Hellstedt with For No One in Particular, which is a great album title out of Sweden again. All right, some very kind of like avant-garde-ish experimental mathcore rock. I don't know, what do they have in the tags? Groove metal, thrash metal. The main thing that was coming to mind was Mike Patton. It says Mike Patton written all over it. So if that's not a reference point, then I will be absolutely shocked. But being a big fan of Mike Patton and things that are weird and wacky, I approve. I give a thumbs up to this. You should collab with Lou Kelly, too, who we featured here a few times, because he has kind of a similar vibe. So I'd be interested what two insane minds with this similar kind of perspective would cook up together. So consider reaching out. Lou's a cool guy. He's really chill, so he would definitely respond if that's something you're interested in. But I think that'll bring it to an end today. We are like just under 30 minutes, which feels about right for an episode like this. I like to look at this as kind of like Metal Trenches radio, just underground radio, pirate radio, whatever you want to call it, checking out some underground stuff. Please do support these musicians, and if you want to support me, you can consider buying some. I'm not wearing it today. You can consider buying some merch. You can join the Patreon for early access to things. We also have channel members now set up here on YouTube. And it greatly helps me out and helps support this segment in particular because, let's face it, it's the least popular segment, least viewed, and least ad revenue. So thankful for that, but I love doing it, and this is all about mainly getting these small artists out there to your ear holes and hopefully growing them a fan base. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.